If we're claiming to follow him, we don't know who he is. We're going to be following all these different things that appear to be Jesus or represent Jesus or have a elements maybe of Jesus, but they're false Jesuses. And we need to be following the true Jesus. So these next 4 weeks really help us kind of piggyback off of last week and really go into, all right, who was this guy named Jesus? Why do we celebrate Easter? What's the deal with the cross and the resurrection and all that? But before we jump into it, a couple quick things. If you're new or if you haven't been here in a while, we are actually in the process of joining Community Church. So right now we're still called City Center Church here in Bethlehem, but we're going to be becoming Community Church Bethlehem. So we're going to be a new campus from Community Church that's located up in the Poconos. And that's going to kind of phase out over the next weeks and months. And as we do that, you'll start to see things shift and change. And then we will have a Sunday here in the near future where we officially relaunch as Community Church. And it's going to be a big shebang. Maybe we'll bring back the taco truck, since it seems to be a fan favorite. But that'll be happening soon. One of the things that we're going to be doing throughout this process is really focusing on community groups, which are small groups, what we've called in the past city groups. They're going to be having a new name because we're a community church now. We'll be calling these community groups. And this coming Thursday, we are having a community group leader training, okay? Now, that might sound intimidating to you if you don't want to be a leader. But what I will tell you is this. I'm encouraging everyone who calls this church your church. This is your home church. You know, you may not come every Sunday, but when you do go to church, you come here. You give, you serve, you're a part of this. I'm encouraging everyone to come, all right? Because this is the main reason. I think even if you have the desire, maybe you don't have the desire to lead a group, but you do have the desire to be a part of one, I think it's important for all of us to kind of understand what's the point of a community group. What is the heart behind it? What's the vision? And who knows? You know, you may come, hear it, and be like, yeah, you know what? I can't lead one right now, but I want to be a part of one. And who knows what happens in the future? 6 months, a year down the road, you might be like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to lead my own group. So I'm encouraging everyone. Sign up for it. It's this Thursday. You can scan the QR code, or you can go back. I sent out an email and a text this week. So if you get the emails and texts, there was a link sent out this week to sign up in RSVP because we're going to have food. All right. I heard a very wise pastor tell me once. He said, a meeting without food is called an email. And I'm like, that's good. A meeting without food is an email. You don't need to have a meeting, just send an email. So we'll have food. It's gonna be at AJ and Sandra's house. So tell your kids to bring their crayons. They just bought this new house, so they can color the walls and stuff for them. They'll really appreciate that. Sandra's drilling me back there. But I think it's gonna be really good. It's gonna be life-giving. And who knows, you're gonna meet new people. You're gonna hear Pastor Dave and Rebecca are gonna be coming out from the Poconos to lead the training. And we're even gonna try to take some time to break up in smaller groups and kind of replicate what the community groups are gonna look like. This is gonna be essential for our growth as a church moving forward. Doesn't matter what building we're in, when our services are, how many services we have. If we don't have really solid community groups, the health of our church will be affected by it. I think this will be key to really helping us grow and become healthy. So, all right, enough of that. So the 7 I am statements of Jesus. All right, we'll put them up on the screen here. I think I have them. There we go. So these, if you go through the book of John, all right, the book of John is one of the Gospels. It's the 4th Gospel. The Gospels, for those of you who don't know this, and if you're new here, by the way, welcome. Super glad that you're here. If it's your first time in a while or your first time ever, thank you for being here. We're grateful that you're here. And I hope that we can get connected. If you want, you can fill out a Next Steps card at the table over here on the way out. And one of us can link up and we'll add you to the email group, the text group. We can maybe grab coffee or something this week and just get to know you, get you connected. But these 7 I am statements, Jesus goes through them in the book of John. And the book of John is it's basically a biography on the life of Jesus. Okay, and there's 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John is the 4th one. written by the Apostle John, who was the closest to Jesus. So he spent 3.5 years of really tight relationship with Jesus. So I don't want to assume, but I think he knew Jesus pretty well, right? And these are the 7 I am statements. He says, I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the door or the gate. I am the good shepherd, which we're going to look at today. Number 5, I am the resurrection and the life. That'll be Easter Sunday. Number 6 is I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's my wife's favorite. She can quote that. Bam. John 14:6. And then number 7, I am the vine, which we're going to do next week. So today's the good shepherd. Next week is the vine. Week 3 is the light of the world. And then Easter Sunday is resurrection and the life. And I really want to encourage you over the next 4 weeks. This is a great time to invite friends and family. And then obviously for Easter, Easter's a big Sunday that, everyone goes to church, even the atheists. And that's awesome. But this is a great opportunity to introduce people to Jesus in a way that's very just simple and practical. And the goal of this series is to unwrap and discover what it means when Jesus says, I am Jesus. And what does that mean for us today? Because to the dead man, Jesus was life. To the prostitute, he was a second chance. To the searching, he was the long-awaited answer. So who is Jesus to you? What does it mean when Jesus says, I am? So in John chapter 10, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. In verse 11, it says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. A hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. He will abandon the sheep because they don't belong to him and he isn't their shepherd. And so the wolf attacks and scatters the flock. The hired hand runs away because he's working only for the money and doesn't really care about the sheep. I think it's interesting. Jesus calls himself the good shepherd, which means that we have to understand there are also bad shepherds. There are bad shepherds. And he distinguishes himself as the good shepherd. And he kind of talks about this here because he compares the shepherd to what we would call like the worker or the hired hand. And the difference between the two, a shepherd versus a hired hand, someone who's just there to collect a paycheck. They're just hired by someone to watch over the sheep. Have you ever seen those videos where there's like a security guard in like a bar or like a restaurant or a bank or something like that, and something breaks out in that establishment or that restaurant or wherever? There's a fight or there's something, and the security guard is there to be security. And right away he looks at it and says, yeah, I'm not getting involved. They don't pay me enough for this. And he's out. And he just pulls away and doesn't get involved. That's kind of what Jesus is saying. The hired hand, when he sees the wolf, he's like, I'm good. They don't pay me enough for this. The difference is the shepherd is invested. The hired hand is interested. And there's a difference. The shepherd is invested in the sheep because the sheep belong to him. They're his. The hired hand is just interested because he's collecting a paycheck. He's interested in the paycheck. The sheep, whatever, they're just a means to the end. And what we have to remember is that there will be people, there will be influences, there will be things in your life that appear to have your best interest, but really don't. Jesus is invested in you because he created you. As a follower of Jesus, you belong to him. You're part of the flock. And it's so important that we acknowledge him as the good shepherd. Do you know that sheep are mentioned more than any other animal in the Bible? Over 500 times. All right, more than horses and lions and goats and dogs. More than all of them combined. Over 500 times. And it's interesting because why sheep? Of all the animals in the animal kingdom, why sheep? Well, there's some interesting characteristics and challenges of being a sheep. I think you'll find these amusing, all right? Number one, sheep are wanderers. I've never owned a sheep, all right? They look cute, but they also look like one of those things that you buy impulsively and then instantly regret it. Right? Sheep are wanderers, mainly because they have a poor sense of direction. All right? They also have these really ingrained grazing instincts. In other words, they just follow the grass rather than like a path or a road. They're just head down, munching away, and they just follow the grass wherever they go. Because of that, they tend to wander away from the flock sometimes. They tend to find themselves in weird situations, and they look up and they're like, wait, how did I get here? Because they're just focused on what they're eating. That's all they care about. They also do have a flocking behavior. So naturally, they tend to stay together in flocks, but when they do wander off, guess what happens? Others follow them. And then you have other sheep. It's not just one getting lost, it's multiples. And you got to somehow corral them all back. Number two, sheep are mainly defenseless. If you think about it, they don't have really any natural abilities or gifts from God to defend themselves. They don't have claws to claw, or fangs, or wings to fly away. Like if a wolf comes after a sheep, they're in trouble because they don't even really run that fast. They're just kind of stuck. They're defenseless. Number three, sheep tend to be very stubborn. They tend to be very stubborn. All right? And one interesting fact, they can't naturally walk backwards. Did you know that? Like if they go into a corner, it's hard for them to maneuver back. They have to turn completely around. They can't really walk backwards. And then number four, sheep are dirty. Like pigs get a bad rap, I think. I mean, they taste delicious. But I guess lamb is pretty good. It's not my favorite. I'll take bacon over lamb. But they're dirty. Like they have this fleece, this wool that just continues to grow and grow and grow, and it collects dirt. It collects twigs and thorns and bristles and those little things that get stuck to your socks when you go hiking. Like they get bugs and parasites and all this stuff in their wool, and they don't really have any way of cleaning themselves. They can like rub up against the fence post, but they can't, not like a cat. Like a cat will naturally groom itself. Dogs can kind of groom itself, but sheep can't. They're not very good at that. So they're wanderers, they're defenseless, they're stubborn, and they're dirty. I don't know why anyone would want a sheep. If you own sheep, God bless you. I don't understand it. But because of this, because of these four things, sheep need a shepherd. They need a shepherd. And many times it's a matter of life and death. That if they don't have a shepherd, they're in serious trouble. And here we have Jesus calling himself the Good Shepherd. And guess who the sheep are? So those 4 points I just described to us. But think about it. Think about it like this. We tend to wander. Many of us wander through life. You see people all the time just kind of aimlessly wandering through life. No real sense of direction, no real sense of purpose or meaning. They're kind of just wandering. And then they find themselves in bad situations and they're like, wait, how did I get here? Because what we do many times is we have our head down and we're focused on right now on what's making me feel good and what's filling my belly. And I'm just like a sheep with its head down, just eating grass, walking along. We do this in life. Whatever's making me feel good right now in this moment. And I'm just wandering, and then this makes me feel good, and then this makes me feel good, and then this. And no sense of direction, we're just wandering. I think that's why Jesus compares us to sheep. Isaiah 53 says, all we like sheep have gone astray. We've all gone astray. We've all wandered from the path that the Good Shepherd has for us. Number two, we can't really defend ourselves very well. All right? And I'm talking spiritually, obviously. Like when the attacks of the devil come, when the attacks of the enemy and temptation and all these things come at us spiritually, in and of ourselves, we don't have a way to defend ourselves from that. We're defenseless. We need a shepherd to help defend us from the wolves. Number three, we're pretty stubborn. Right? I'm not just talking about your kids. I'm talking about adults. All of us adults. We tend to be kind of stubborn. We struggle with change. We struggle with anything outside of our comfort zone. We like it our way. And then number 4, don't take this offense, don't be offended, but we're dirty. I'm not saying you didn't take a shower this morning, but we are spiritually dirty. We are unrighteous in God's sight. The Bible says that our best deeds, our best days are like filthy rags. We're born with what we call a sin nature. And I'm not trying to, some of you are like, why did I come here this morning? But there's good news, I promise. But that's how we're born. We're born into this. And we find ourselves the same way a sheep didn't ask to be a sheep. We may not have asked to be born in the situations that we're born into, but we still have these things to deal with. So we need a shepherd. If we are sheep, if the Bible compares us to sheep, we need a shepherd. And many times we're allowing other things, people, and systems, and the world around us to shepherd us. Because if we're not following the good shepherd, chances are we're following other shepherds. So why does Jesus call himself the good shepherd? Again, of all the analogies, of all the things that he could have said, why the good shepherd? Well, number 1, he guides. Just like a shepherd will guide his sheep, the good shepherd will guide us. You know, there's a very famous chapter in the Bible, Psalms 23. Even if you don't go to church regularly, even if you don't call yourself a Christian, you're probably familiar with this psalm. Psalms 23, it begins with these words, "The Lord is my shepherd." All right? A couple interesting things about this. This psalm is only 6 verses long, but of all 150 psalms, Psalms 23 is widely considered to be the best known and most beloved. It's quoted at funerals, it's in movies and TV, it's printed on plaques, posters, and memorial cards. It's been set to various hymns and songs, and it's memorized in like Sunday schools across the world. It's very, very well known. And the funny thing is, interesting thing I would say, it's written by a former shepherd, David. David used to be a shepherd. He grew up tending sheep. And he draws from real life, firsthand experience when he writes this short yet very powerful song. And jumping ahead a couple verses to Psalms 23:3, this is David describing the good shepherd. He says, "He renews my strength. He guides me along the right paths, bringing honor to his name." In order to not wander through life, we must submit to the Good Shepherd's guidance. If not, we will forever be a wanderer. We will forever be a nomad, just kind of wandering through life. Like, I don't know if you're anything like me, but one of the things that my wife and I have dreamed about doing one day is selling the house and buying an RV and just going. Does that attract anybody? Or some of you are like, that's my nightmare. I love that idea. I love the idea of just being able to drive anywhere, not have a set, maybe have somewhat of a set agenda. Because when we go on vacation, I'm like, this day we're going here, this day we're going here, this day we're going here. And she's like, I just want to sleep in. Like, yeah, we're out. But that idea of traveling and just doing whatever sounds kind of appealing. But really, it sounds good when you're in an RV and you don't have any responsibilities, but we all know it's really hard to do that. And also at the same time, have fruitful relationships, put roots down somewhere, be connected to a community, be connected to a church. And as appealing as that sounds, you're not created to be a wanderer. You're created to be a follower. And the important question that we have to answer is, who are we following? Who are we following? And in order to find yourself in a place where you're not wandering aimlessly through life, we have to submit to the Good Shepherd's guidance. You know, earlier in John chapter 10, where Jesus is talking about being the Good Shepherd, it says in verse 3, it says, the gatekeeper opens the gate for him, for the shepherd. And the sheep recognize his voice, and they come to him. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. After he's gathered his own flock, he walks ahead of them, and they follow him because they know his voice. They won't follow a stranger. They will run from him because they don't know his voice. Another question I have for you is, do you recognize the voice of Jesus in your life? Do you recognize his voice? Or is it drowned out by all the other voices? Or are you following all the other voices? And it seems like Jesus is just a distant voice off in the background. You know, a sheep recognize the voice of the shepherd and they come to him and then they follow him. And he goes ahead of them, leading the way. And the thing about this is, the more that a sheep knows the voice of the shepherd, the less likely they are to be deceived by a stranger's voice. Amen. And for us, we have to know Jesus' voice. It's crucial. And sometimes that is one of those questions I get all the time from people who are like, how do I know if it's God's voice? How do I know if it's him speaking to me? And that's a great question. I think we've all been there at some point. And I even wrestle with this sometimes. Sometimes I'll feel like led to do something or feel like I need to, and I'm like, God, is this really you? And I don't necessarily have an easy answer for that. But I will tell you this. I know my wife's voice. All right? And your what? And your whistle. If she does it too much, I'm going to be deaf. I'm not going to hear your voice. So maybe tone down the Puerto Rican whistling. It's wild. But I know her voice. Like, you could blindfold me, put me in a room with 100 women, and I would be able to pick her voice out. Do you know why? It's because I've spent so much time with her. Like, she's my best friend. So I've had so much time with her, hearing her voice, hearing her speak to me, hearing her tell me about her day, hearing her tell me about her hopes and dreams and wishes and her stories and all those conversations. It's imprinted her voice in my brain so that when I hear it, even from a distance or even in a crowded room, I recognize it. And I want to challenge you with this. If you don't know Jesus' voice, it may be because you simply just haven't spent much time with him. And I'm saying that graciously and lovingly. I'm not condemning you or judging you. But it may be that simple. And what's beautiful about that is you can change that today. Like, it's not this grand thing that, oh my gosh, I got to figure this out. It's simply about spending time with him. It's simply about learning about who he is, what he loves, what his word says. And I think what we do many times is we forget that the Christian life takes time. We live in a culture that we want everything quick. Like, I've given up fast food, at least since January 1st, except for Wingstop. I don't consider that fast food. If I gotta wait 20 minutes, it's not fast. And I only eat on the weekends. It's my cheat meal. But I remember when I was in my heathen days eating fast food, I ate it too much. But I remember driving by like McDonald's or Popeyes, and if I saw the drive-through with like 3 cars or more, I'm like, I'm not waiting. Because I want it quick. Fast food should be fast. Like, give it to me now. But our culture has taught us that everything should be fast. Everything should be now. We live in a microwave culture when we should live in a crock-pot culture. Good things take time. And the Christian life takes time. It is a marathon, not a sprint. And it's about every single day waking up and choosing to spend time with the Good Shepherd and learning his voice. And there's going to be days where you wake up, you sit down, you're like, all right, I got up early, got my Bible, got my coffee, I'm going to put some worship music on. You sit down and you read, and it's like, I don't know if I heard his voice. You're going to have days like that. But it's about doing it again the next day, and the next day, and the next day. Because what we've done is we've tuned our ears to the voices around us, and we haven't tuned our ears to God. And tuning a piano, tuning an instrument, It takes time to tune it, and it takes practice. And that's what spending time with Jesus is like. It's taking practice. And if you're an athlete, if you have a skill or an instrument that sometimes you don't feel like going to practice. You know what I mean? There's days where my wife and I, like, Friday nights are our date nights, almost religiously. And there's days where we've had a long week and we're like, I love you. I don't really feel like going outside. I'm tired. It's not because I don't love my wife, but it's the practice of going out. And every time we go, we're like, I'm glad I came out. I'm going to hate myself tomorrow because I'm going to be tired. But I'm glad we came out, right? Because it's pushing past the feelings. It's pushing past the emotions. It's pushing past our need for comfort all the time. But that's how you start to discover the voice of Jesus, spending time in his word, tuning out the wrong voices and tuning into the right. Because life can be very overwhelming, obviously. And various decisions and choices that we have to make can seem daunting at times. But that's why we need a shepherd. Someone to guide and direct us, to show us the path to take, to show us the job to take, to show us who to marry, to show us who not to marry sometimes, right? To show us all the different decisions and the different paths that we need to take throughout our life. But if you don't know his voice, you won't know his paths. Jesus calls you by name, and he leads the way. And our job is to simply follow. Number 2, not only does he guide, but he provides. The good shepherd provides. Psalms 23, the first verse, 1 and 2. It says, the Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. Need, not want. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows and leads me beside the peaceful streams. Do you know that sheep won't lie down if there's anything around them that's causing fear, conflict, or disruption? Like, they're kind of weird in this sense. Like, it needs to almost be like perfect conditions for them to lie down, or else they struggle with resting. They also won't lie down if there's any parasites or bugs or like insects that are bothering them and irritating them. They also won't lie down if they're hungry. Neither will I. When those conditions are met, though, they will lie down and rest. They also have a very hard time drinking from streams that are like moving too quickly or rushing. Any kind of fast-moving water, they avoid. I don't know if it's because they're scared of it or what, but they don't really drink from it. They need calm waters to drink from. Many of us aren't experiencing true rest and true peace because we're waiting on conditions to be perfect. We don't have enough money, so we're going to work and work and work and work and work and sacrifice family, sacrifice friends, sacrifice our health, sacrifice all these things because I can't take a break yet. I got to do this, this, and this. There's always something that's on our mind that feels urgent. We talked about this a few weeks ago. And in the rat race of life, we feel like we can't rest or find any peace because it's just like there's always one more thing. And that's hard. It's hard to navigate through. But one thing that in these couple verses that we just read, later on it says that he prepares a table for me in the midst of my enemies. How could you prepare a table to eat from in the midst of your enemies, or in the midst of the chaos, or in the midst of all of that? It doesn't mean conditions will be perfect, but it means the good shepherd will be with you in the midst of it. And he provides this peace. He provides this rest. Jesus says, come to me, all of you who are tired. You're worn out. You've tried doing it your own way. You've tried doing religion. How about you come to me and I'll show you what a true rest is. He says, come follow me and learn the unforced rhythms of grace. That's what he calls us to. There's a work involved. There's a job. things that we're going to need to do, but that's not the heart of it is rest. And he says to follow me. Jesus was very active. Jesus was always doing something. But in the midst of it, he had peace. And Jesus, the Good Shepherd, provides this peace for us. He provides this nourishment for us, for our souls that we're trying to fill out in the world, but really it can be only filled in him. And many of us aren't experiencing this true rest, this true peace, because we haven't fully embraced Jesus as our Good Shepherd. Instead, we've embraced other shepherds. Maybe it's a boss. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe it's your kid's coach that wants them playing 18 sports every season. Maybe it's a teacher. Maybe it's a professor. Maybe it's somebody who's putting these pressures on you and you feel like you just can't survive. We've embraced other shepherds to guide us and lead us. And I'm not saying any of those things are naturally wrong, but if they're the ones that we're following solely, we're going to find ourselves unable to rest, unable to have peace. Because we've embraced these other shepherds and we haven't embraced our need for a shepherd. Because what happens is when you don't acknowledge Jesus as your shepherd, and you think, I don't need Jesus, I don't need a shepherd, you're going to naturally follow other shepherds by default. You might not realize it, but you are. Because like we learned a few months ago when we did Practicing the Way, every single one of us are disciples. Even if you're not a Christian, you're a disciple. It just might be not a disciple of Jesus. It could be a disciple of money, a disciple of success, a disciple of status, a disciple of something. But we are, because it's ingrained in us as human beings to follow after someone. And we wander through the chaos of life. You know, Matthew 5, Jesus is teaching the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount. He said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied." There's a hunger and a thirst on the inside of all of us that can only be satisfied in Jesus. And the peace, the rest, that hunger, that thirst that we have for purpose and meaning and fulfillment, we're searching for it out there. It can only be met in the Good Shepherd. Because you will find people on their deathbed today that live to be 90, 95 years old, chasing fulfillment, chasing purpose, chasing success out there. And guess what? They never found it. They never found it. The peace and the rest and the hunger and the thirst that you have on the deepest part of your soul is only found in Jesus. So, number one, he guides. Number two, he provides. Number three, he corrects.
Yeah.
He corrects us. Listen, the Psalms 23 talks about a rod and a staff. These two, they were separate things. A rod was like a club, all right? Like a baseball bat with like nails in it, like something like that. Like it was a weapon to use to fight off the wolves, to protect the sheep from predators. The staff was kind of like what you see at Christmas time in the nativity scene. It was a long stick with a curve on the end, kind of like a candy can, is where it comes from, you know what I mean? And the staff was used to guide, to correct, and even rescue sheep. They would use the hook to kind of hook them by the neck and pull them back if they got into a bad situation. But he uses the staff to correct us. And Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11, it says, "No discipline is enjoyable while it's happening." How many of you like to be disciplined? You're such a liar. I know you're listening. Robert. You can grow to like the fruit of discipline, right? But discipline in itself, like when you discipline your kids, many times it's just as hard for the parents as it is for the kid. Because you're torn, because you feel like you're inflicting pain on your child, but you know it's necessary. And when you get to a point of maturity, like Robert's at, you start to embrace discipline. I love him. He's great. He's done shouting me down this message up. No discipline's enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful. Going to the gym sucks. It's painful. I hate getting on that stupid treadmill. I hate doing push-ups. I hate doing sit-ups. I hate it. But it says afterwards, there's a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. There's a side to spiritual discipline and spiritual correction that makes us more like Jesus. It's a harvest of right living because sheep and us are stubborn. And I love you, sometimes stupid. Like sheep are also, I didn't put this on my list because I didn't want to offend everybody, but sheep can also be very dumb. Like they're just kind of, I don't know if it's because they're always, those are rams. Never mind. I thought maybe they're always hitting their heads together, but they're stubborn. And they need constant correction. They need constant, like, get back over here, get over here, why are you over there? Like, part of allowing God to be your heavenly Father and your good shepherd is embracing his heavenly discipline and correction. It's just part of the package. And sometimes we resist it. And the discipline looks and comes to fruition in different ways in our lives. Like one thing, well, I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but one thing that we have to be careful of is, because you're going through a hard season, don't automatically think that God's punishing you. He might be, but he also might just be letting you go through a difficult season because it's going to make you better. You know what I mean? Like our kids give us grief when they have to go to school, but we know it's necessary. And sometimes we have to go through the school of hard knocks in life because God is trying to produce something in us that's greater and better. It's that peaceful harvest of right living. Good parents discipline their children. So all you parents out there, if you feel bad because you're too hard on your kids, good parents discipline their children. If you don't, as a parent, you probably don't care about your kids that much. Like Proverbs is a great book to read through for just wisdom. That's what it is. It's a book of wisdom. Proverbs 13:24, it says, those who spare the rod of discipline hate their children. Those who love their children care enough to discipline them. If you care enough about your kids, you're going to discipline them because you want them to learn now at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old rather than learning when they're 30. Because the consequences are drastically different. You know, mess up now, you get grounded or you lose your iPad or something like that. Mess up when you're 30, you could lose your house. You could go to jail. You could lose your job. Like, it's different. And if I want to save my kids from that, I'm going to discipline them now. And we have to understand God is the author of our stories. Whether we realize that or not, he's authored your story of life. He knows what life is going to be like for you. He knows the beginning from the end. And this comes as us trusting our Heavenly Father the same way we want our kids to trust us as their parents. Knowing that, you know what? He created the universe. He probably knows a little bit more about this than I do. He knows me better than I know myself. All right, my last point here. Number 4, he protects. He guides, he provides, he corrects, and he protects. Back to Psalms 23. It says, even when, not even if, even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Here it is, your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. Or correct is another translation of that. But correction is also comfort. Knowing my Father cares enough about me, knowing my Father's invested in me, there's a comfort in that too. So your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. And then the last verse of this chapter, surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. Something special about this verse. And this just came to me, so bear with me if I don't get it right the first time. Leave that verse up. So it says, surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. So many times in life, we live our life pursuing love, goodness, and blessings. That's how we live our life. A good job, money, health, success, family, right? And where's Jesus? He's behind us. And if we're lucky, or if we have the time, we'll say, hey, you know what? I forgot Jesus is still there. But okay, I still got to go after all this. When really, it should be reversed. Because when I'm following after Jesus, and he's leading the way, as my good shepherd, and I'm following him, and only him, seeking his kingdom first, guess what shows up? All the goodness, all the mercy, all the blessings, all the other stuff that I was chasing after, it's chasing after me now. Because I'm in the right direction. And that's what he's getting at. He's saying, listen, you can pursue all that stuff, but you're not going to get it. When you pursue Jesus, it's funny how that stuff starts to show up. Listen, shepherds would often lead their sheep through ravines and valleys. And in these areas, there were natural dangers. There's predators. There were chances for flash floods. Tough navigation because of how narrow the passages were at times, and sheep are clumsy. And the sheep, though, they would remain calm as long as their shepherd was present. Because like the beginning of that verse said, it says, even when I walk through the darkest valley. It's not an if, it's a when. You're gonna go through difficulty. You're gonna go through challenges. You're going to go through suffering. Jesus promises us that trouble and difficulty will be a part of this life, but he also promises his presence. And true proof of Jesus' presence in your life is not when life is perfect. It's when your peace is perfect, when life isn't. That's the proof, that's the fruit of God's presence in your life, is that you can maintain your peace in the midst of chaos. In the midst of that valley. That's the proof. Don't fall for the lie. This is bad theology that I hear sometimes. And it's bad theology from bad shepherds that try to tell you that when you're going through a hard time, you're going through difficulty, it's because God is trying to, punish you or get a hold of you. You shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that. And again, like I said earlier, sometimes he'll use those things to correct you. But sometimes it's just life, being life. And the presence of trouble does not mean the absence of Jesus. And we have to remind ourselves that, yeah, life is crazy right now, but Jesus is still with me. My shepherd is still with me. And he promises to walk through the valley with us. Sometimes we live with this idea of escapism. And we try to just escape. And that's how we deal with issues. We deal with problems. We run to the bottle, we run to the drugs, we run to that relationship, we run to whatever to escape. When the way of following Jesus is not escape, it's through. The way of following Jesus is through the valley, not around the valley. And the thing is, we all know this song. But do we all know the shepherd that this song is talking about? Have we wandered? Have we been distracted by the things of this world? Have we become lost? Have we had our head down just grazing, eating grass and found ourselves off somewhere where we're like, how did I get here? I told you at the beginning, I came out hot with like all the bad news. There's good news. Luke 15, 4-7, it says, so Jesus told them this story. If a man has 100 sheep, and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go to search for the one that is lost until he finds it? When you read this, Jesus is talking to people that are familiar with shepherding. I don't think any of us are, right? I know what a sheepdog is, and I know what a sheep is. I don't really know anything else. He's talking to people that are very familiar, and he's asking them a rhetorical question. Because he says, won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go search for the one that was lost and he finds it? He's asking them in the sense of knowing that they already know the answer to that is yes, he will. Because it was in their culture. It's like, yeah, If he loses a sheep, yeah, he's going after that sheep. He'll leave the other 99 in the sheepfold, and he will go find that lost sheep. It was common sense then. It was common knowledge. And he's saying, and when he's found it, he'll joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. And when he arrives, he'll call together his friends and neighbors and say, listen, I found that sheep that I missed, that I lost. Right? Like, he says, rejoice with me because I found my lost sheep. And then he draws the connection. He says, in the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over the 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. The good news is, if you've wandered, Jesus has never taken his eye off you. He sees where you're at. He knows where you're at. And he's coming to find you. The question is, will you pick your head back up and see that he is? He's coming to find you. He's chasing you down. It's our job to turn and follow him back to the sheepfold. And when you can't follow, he'll carry you on his shoulders. And he'll bind up your wounds. And he'll treat you and he'll bring you back. That's the good news. That's the gospel. That's why he's a good shepherd. The bad shepherds, the hired hands, if a sheep gets lost, they're not going to look for it because they got 99 others. But Jesus values the lost. He values the one just as much as the 99. When we wander, when we stray, when we get lost and off the path, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, chases after us, finds us where we are, and graciously brings us back to the fold. And there's something to be grateful of because every day is one day closer to being found. It's not that Jesus is chasing after you. It's picking your head up and realizing, yeah, this isn't working. I've tried it all. I've tried the grass in the other pasture. It's not working. It's not satisfying. It's not fulfilling me. I'm by myself. We've never been in a society that's more connected and more isolated at the same time. Depression, anxiety, and loneliness, it's through the roof. Studies are coming out that loneliness is more detrimental to your health than smoking. Then all this other stuff that we think is killing us, loneliness is like at the top of the list. People are isolated. They're on their own. And Jesus invites you into a sheepfold, into a community. Not just with the shepherd, but with other sheep. Because sheep, like I said, they have flocking instincts. They want to be in a flock. They want to be together. And that's what the church is. It's a picture of the church. And I just want us, I'm going to come back up in a second with a couple next steps, but thank you for dealing with some of the stuff that AJ was talking about. It's challenging sometimes with where we're at, but the good news is we are growing into a place where we're going to have a full worship band and all those things. I'm going to play another video, and it's a common one that we've heard, but there's a theme, and this isn't necessarily directly connected to what we're talking about today, but there's been a theme in my life over the last few years that has helped me drastically, because the last few years have been challenging, not just with church, but with life. We say all the time, life be life. But Becky sent me something yesterday, and it was like, God be Godding, too. You know what I mean? Life be life, but God be Godding. It's a mouthful, but it's true. God has a way of showing up. And what's gotten me through the difficult seasons is gratefulness. It's just being grateful. It's being grateful for all that he does do. It's so easy to find all the stuff that we wish was better or wish was different. But an attitude of gratitude, it takes us so far. Just being grateful. Not comparing to others. Not comparing to where you wish you would be. The joy of following Jesus is that you don't have to be where you think you should be to follow him, right? Like we feel like, I gotta clean this up, I gotta fix this before I go to church. No, you don't. It's like saying I gotta take a bath before I take a shower. Doesn't make any sense. Just jump in the shower. Come to Jesus, and he'll clean you up. He'll pick you back up. He'll get you going. So just take a few moments to reflect on what we just heard, pray, worship, and then I'll come back up, close out with a couple quick next steps, and I think Sandra has a couple announcements, and we'll get out. We started a little later, so we're gonna maybe go a little later, but not so much. All right, God, I thank you so much for your goodness and your grace. Pray that you meet us here in this moment. Pray that you speak to us. Help us to recognize your voice as the Good Shepherd. In Jesus' name.